Can you be a life coach without training? Well, there's some good news and some bad news. Which one do you want first? Let's start with the good news. The good news is yes, you can be a life coach without training. Now, you ready for the bad news? You can be a life coach without training. It's exactly the same. Why is this good news and bad news? In this video, we'll talk about some of the pros and the cons behind the answer to that question, including some that can keep you out of trouble. One of the points that I would make right up front is that there's a very low barrier to entry when it comes to coaching. And the pros for this are obvious. Because there's a very low barrier to entry, pretty much anyone who feels called or compelled or interested to go out there and help some people in meaningful ways can hang up their shingle and open up their shop for business as a life coach. This means you don't have to wait to get started. You could do it now. You could do it today. So what are you waiting for? The problem here, the con side, is that everybody else can do the same thing. This means potentially that you'll be competing with everyone else who wants to start a life coaching business for the same pool of clients. Now, I believe that there's enough to go around. I believe that there are enough people on this planet who need coaching that anyone who wants to provide coaching could find a match. But that doesn't erase the fact that you've got all of these other coaches that are entering the field, and we're all up against the same problem of competing for people's attention. This makes marketing and differentiating yourself from the hordes of other coaches that are out there extremely crucial and important to your success as you set up your coaching practice. Even from your client's perspective, it's important for consumers of coaching and those who would be clients to be more discerning and to hold their coaches to a higher standard of performance and qualification and expertise. Since there's a really low barrier to entry in the industry, there's no guarantees that the coach even knows what they're doing. Another point for us to consider is that coaching requires a fairly basic skill set, including the ability to communicate, basic goal setting, an understanding of human psychology, to name a few. Now, the upside, obviously, is that if you're a basically decent and social person already, you probably already possess many of the skills that are necessary to become a competent coach. As with any skill set, you can also develop and refine these skills as you add experience to the mix. The downside is that common sense is not always so common. And often those who are drawn to the coaching industry are what we would call empaths. These are people who really feel deeply when other people feel deeply. They connect on a very empathic level with their clients. This can make it very difficult for people who are actually drawn to the industry to detach from the outcomes of their clients. This can become a problem because attachment to the outcomes is the job of our clients, not of the coach. When I'm doing parent coaching, this becomes very obvious, and I teach the parents that I coach, somebody has to be attached to the outcome. If it's you, it's not your child. And in a similar way, if it's you that's attached to your client's outcomes, then it's not them. Energetically, this creates a little bit of an issue. And that's why I listed it as one of the downsides. Now, let's talk about two specific points that could keep you out of trouble. But before we do that, would you take a moment to subscribe? If you're finding this information helpful, click the subscribe button and then hit that notification bell so that you'll know when the next video is ready. Let's talk for a moment about legal and ethical considerations. The upside to the whole coaching industry is that there is very little regulation of the industry. In most jurisdictions, there are very few requirements or compliance guidelines that coaches have to meet in order to operate their business. Having come from the mental health industry, this came as a huge relief to me. I had a traditional psychotherapy practice for 15 years. And during that time, I had to be very acutely aware of the regulations around the industry. There were many times as a psychologist that I felt my hands were tied a little bit in the way that I could help my clients because of these regulations. Well, in coaching, that is not an issue. However, that does not erase the need for awareness of the ethical issues that are involved with coaching or the limitations to your particular practice. One specific area of limitation that I would invite you to consider is the difference between coaching and therapy. Again, this is something that I am really familiar with as a professional psychologist, and I have done both. For a coach to practice therapy is actually against the law in most jurisdictions. Let me say that again. For a coach to practice therapy is actually against the law in most jurisdictions. This means you can go to jail for practicing without a license if you are practicing a regulated activity like mental health therapy. Sometimes this has to do with just being really careful about how you represent your services in your marketing materials or to your clients. There should be no case where you lead your clients or prospective clients to believe that you are providing a service that can only be provided by a licensed professional. This is something that can keep you out of jail. Earlier in my career, I spent a fair amount of time in family court as an evaluator in child custody cases where bitter, angry divorcing people couldn't figure out how to share their kids. Well, I got thrown into the mix there, but I also got to know the legal system a little bit. And I can say this with a high degree of confidence. Saying I didn't know is typically not an adequate defense in court. Be aware of what the limitations are so that you can practice within those. Now let's talk about one final point. The fact that credentialing or training is not required in coaching does not mean that it's not a good idea. In fact, I think it is a very good idea to get some additional training or certification so that you can set yourself apart from all of the other coaches that are out there offering services, and so that you can safeguard against some of the common pitfalls that come up in the industry. Coaches need coaching. Official certification or mentoring or working closely with people who have a lot of experience in this area can help to shave years off of your learning curve and ultimately save you a lot of trouble, headache, and money. The downside of this, obviously, is that formal training or certification typically has a cost attached to it. Be ready to spend at least your time, energy, and money. For a lot of coaches starting out, they have more time than they have money. Well, then spend your time. For some coaches, they'll have more money than they have time. Then spend your money, and probably you're going to have to spend both. Collaboration, training, and mentoring can go far beyond the free resources that are available on places like this channel. When you think of it as an investment rather than an expense, you will do whatever is necessary to create a return on that investment. I have found that personally as I have invested in my own coaching so that I can be available to show up in more powerful ways for my clients. If you're ready to take that next step, let's meet, shall we? Go to the URL on the screen, drpauljenkins.com/let's meet, where we can set up a private session for you to talk with me or a member of my team about the next steps for you. Only use this if you are serious about moving forward in your role as a coach or a positivity practitioner. We're here to help. Hope to see you soon.